The ultimate power. Everyone holds in his fortune. Everyone holds his fortune in his own hands. Like a sculptor, the raw material he will fashion into a figure. But it's the same with that type of artistic activity as with all others. We are merely born with the capability to do it. The skill to mold the material into what we want must be learned and attentively cultivated. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. There exists a form of power and intelligence that represents the high point of human potential. It's the source of the greatest achievements and discoveries in history. It's an intelligence that is not taught in our schools nor analyzed by professors, but almost all of us at some point have had glimpses of it in our own experience. It often comes to us in a period of tension, facing a deadline, the urgent need to solve a problem, a crisis of sorts. Or it can come as the result of constant work or a project. In any event, pressed by circumstances, we feel unusually energized and focused. Our minds become completely absorbed in the task before us. This intense concentration sparks all kinds of ideas. They come to us as we fall asleep, out of nowhere, as if springing from our unconsciousness. At these times, other people seem less resistant to our influence. Perhaps we are more attentive to them, or we appear to have a special power that inspires their respect. We might normally experience life in a passive mode, constantly reacting to this or that incident. But for these days or weeks, we feel like we can determine events and make things happen. We could express this power in the following ways. Most of the time, we live in an interior world of dreams, desires, and obsessive thoughts. But in this period of exceptional creativity, we are impelled by the need to get something done that has a practical effect. We force ourselves to step aside our own inner chamber of habitual thoughts and connect to the world. At these moments, suddenly exposed to new details and ideas, we become more inspired and creative. Once the deadline has passed or the crisis is over, the feeling of power and heightened creativity generally fades away. We return to our distracted state, and the sense of control is gone. The problem we face is that this form of power and intelligence is either ignored as a subject of study or is surrounded by all kind of myths and misconception of all of which only add to the mystery. We imagine that creativity and brilliance just appear out of nowhere, the fruit of natural talent or perhaps of a good mood or an alignment of stars. It would be an immense help to clear up the mystery, to name the feeling of power, and to understand how it can be manufactured and maintained. Let us call this sensation mastery. The feeling that we have a greater command of reality, other people, and ourselves. Although it might be something we experience for only a short while, for others, masters of their own field, it becomes their way of life, their way of seeing the world. And at the root of this power is a simple process that leads to mastery, one that is accessible to all of us. The process can be illustrated in the following manner. Let us say we are learning the piano. We are entering a new job where we must acquire certain skills. In the beginning, we are outsiders. Our initial impression of the piano or the work environment are based on prejudgment and often contain an element of fear. When we first study the piano, the keyboard looks rather intimidating. We don't understand the relationships between the keys, the chords, the pedals, and everything else that goes into creating music. In a new job situation, we are arrogant, ignorant of the power relationship between people, the psychology of a boss, the rules and procedures that we consider critical for success. We are confused. The knowledge we need in both cases is over our heads. Although we might enter these situations that excitement about what we can learn or do with our new skills, we quickly realize how much hard work there is ahead of us. The great danger is that we give in to the feeling of boredom, impatience, fear, and confusion. We stop observing and learning. The process comes to a halt. If, on the other hand, we manage these emotions and allow time to take its course, something remarkable begin to take shape. As we continue to observe and follow the lead of others, we gain clarity, learn the rules, and see how things work and fit together. If we keep practicing, we gain fluency. Basic skills are mastered, allowing us to take on newer or more exciting challenges. At a certain point, we move from student to practitioner. We try out our own ideas, gaining valuable feedback in the process. We use our expanding knowledge in ways that we are increasingly creative. Instead of just learning how others do things, we bring our own style and individuality into play. As years go by and we remain faithful to this process, yet another leap takes place to mastery. The keyboard is no longer something outside of us. It is internalized and becomes part of our own nervous system, our fingertips. In our career, we now have a feel for the group dynamic, the current state of business. We can apply this feel to social situation, seeing deeper into other people and anticipating their reactions. We can make decisions that are rapid and highly creative. Ideas come to us. We have learned the rules so well that we can now be the ones to break and rewrite them. In the process leading to this ultimate form of power, we can identify three distinct phases or levels. The is the apprenticeship, the second is the creative active, the third, mastery. In the first phase, we stand on the outside of our field, learning as much as we can of the basic elements and rules. In the second phase, through much practice and immersion, we see into the inside of the machinery, how things connect with one another, and thus gain a more comprehensive understanding of the subject. With this comes a new power, the ability to experiment and creatively play with the element involved. In the third phase, our degree of knowledge, experience, and focus is so deep that we can now see the whole picture with complete clarity. We can call this power intuition. But intuition is nothing more than a sudden and immediate seizing of what is real without the need for words or formulas. Intuitive power at the mastery level are a mix of the instinctive and the radical, the conscious and the unconscious, the human and the animal. It is our way of making sudden and powerful connection to the environment, to feeling or thinking inside things. As children, we had some of this intuitive power and spontaneity, but it is generally drummed out of us by all of the information that overloads our mind over time. Masters return to this childlike state, their works displaying degrees of spontaneity and access to the unconscious, but at a much higher level than the child. If we move through the process to this endpoint, we activate the intuitive power latent in every human brain. on that we may have briefly experienced when we worked so deeply on a single problem or project. When we reach mastery, this intuition is a power at our command, the fruit of working through the lengthier process. Think of mastery in this way. Throughout history, men and women have felt trapped by the limitations of their consciousness, by their lack of contact with reality and power to affect the world around them. They have sought out kinds of shortcuts to this expanded consciousness and sense of control in the form of magic rituals, trances, incantations, and drugs. This hunger for magical shortcuts has survived to our day in the form of simple formulas for success. Ancient secrets finally revealed in which a mere change of attitude will attract the right energy. All of this searching is centered on something that doesn't exist: the effortless path to practical power, the quick and easy solution, the El Dorado of the mind. At the same time that so many people lose themselves in these endless fantasies, they ignore the one real power that they actually possess. And unlike magic or simplistic formulas, we can see the material effects of this power in history. The great discoveries and inventions and the magnificent buildings and work of art, the technological prowess we possess, all works of the masterful mind. All works of the masterful mind. This power brings to those who possess it the kind of connection to reality and the ability to alter the world that the mystics and magicians of the past could only dream of. Over the centuries, people have placed a wall around such mastery. They have called it genius and thought of it as inaccessible. They have seen it as the product of privilege, inborn talent, or just the right alignment of the stars. They have made it seem as if it were an illusion or magic, but that wall is imaginary. This is the real secret. The brain that we possess is the work of 6 million years of development. And more than anything else, this evolution of brain was designed to lead us to mastery, the latent power within us all. Keys to mastery. If all of us are born with an essentially similar brain, with more or less the same configuration and potential for mastery, why is it then that is in history only a limited number of people seem to truly excel and realize this potential power? Certainly, in a practical sense, this is the most important question for us to answer. The common explanation for Mozart or Leonardo da Vinci revolve around natural talent and brilliance, but thousands upon thousands of children display more exceptional skill and talent in some field, yet relatively few of them ever amount to anything. Wherever those who are less brilliant in their youth can often attain much more natural talent or a high IQ. I cannot explain future achievement. Natural talent or high IQ cannot explain future achievement. Natural talent or high IQ cannot explain future achievement. What we find instead in the stories of great masters is essentially the following pattern: a youthful passion or predilection, a chance encounter that allows them to discover how to apply it, an apprenticeship in which they come alive with energy and focus. They excel by their ability to practice harder and move faster through the process. All of this stemming from the intensity of their desire to learn, from the deep connection they feel to their field of study. And at the core of this intensity of effort is, in fact, a quality that is genetic and inborn, not talent or brilliance, which is something that must be developed, but rather a deep and powerful inclination towards a particular subject. This inclination is a reflection of a personal uniqueness. This uniqueness is not something merely poetic or philosophical. It is scientific fact that genetically every one of us is unique. Our exact genetic makeup has never happened before and will never be repeated. This uniqueness is revealed to us through the preferences we innately feel for particular activities or subjects for study. Such inclinations can be toward music or mathematics, certain sports or games, solving puzzle like problems, tinkering and building or playing with words. With those who stand out by their later mastery, they experience this inclination more deeply and clearly than others. They experience it as an inner calling. It tends to dominate their thoughts and dreams. They find their way by accident or sheer effort to a career path in which this inclination can flourish. This intense connection and desire allow them to stand the pain of the process, the self doubts, the tedious works of practice, hours of practice and study, and inevitable setbacks and the endless bars from the envious. They develop a resiliency and the confidence that others lack. In our culture, we tend to equate thinking and intellectual powers with success and achievement. In many ways, however, it's an emotional quality that separates those who master a field from the many who simply work at a job. Our level of desire, patience, and persistence and confidence end up playing a much larger role in success than sheer reasoning powers. In the past, only elites or those with an almost superhuman amount of energy and drive could pursue a career of their choice and master it. A man was born into the military or groomed for the government, chosen among those of the right class. If he happened to display a talent and desire for such work, it was mostly a coincidence. Millions of people who were not part of the right social class, gender, and ethnic group were rigidly excluded from the possibility of pursuing their calling. Even if people wanted to follow their inclination, access to the information and knowledge pertaining to that particular field was controlled by elites. That is why there are relatively few masters in the past and why they stand out so much. These social and political barriers, however, have mostly disappeared. Today we have the kind of access to information and knowledge that past masters could have only dreamed about. Now, more than ever, we have the capacity and freedom to move toward the inclination that all of us possess. Although we may find ourselves at a historical moment rich in possibilities for mastery, in which more and more people can move toward their inclinations, we, we in fact face our last obstacle in attaining such power, one that is cultural and insidiously dangerous. The very concept of mastery has become de- denigrated, associated with something old fashioned and even unpleasant. It is generally not seen as something to aspire to. Anything that smacks of discipline or effort seems fussy and passe. Why bother working for years to attain mastery when we can have so much power with very little effort? Technology will solve everything. This passive attitude has even assumed a moral stance. Mastery and power are evil. They are the domain of patriarchal elites. If you are not careful, you'll find this attitude infecting you in subtle ways. You'll unconsciously lower your sights as to what you can accomplish in life. This can diminish your levels of effort and discipline below the point of effectiveness. Conforming to social norms, you will listen more to others than your own voice. You may choose a career path based on what peers and parents tell you, on what seems lucrative. If you lose contact with the inner calling, you can have some success in life, but eventually your lack of true desire catches up with you. Your work becomes mechanical. You come to live to leave for leisure, immediate pleasures. In this way, you become increasingly passive and never most move past the first phase. You may grow frustrated and depressed, never realizing that the source of it is your alienation from your own creative potential. Before it's too late, you must find your way to your inclination, exploiting the incredible opportunities of the age that you have been born into. You must convince yourself of the following: people get the mind and equality of brain that they deserve through their actions in life. Recent discoveries in neuroscience are overturning long held belief that the brain is genetically hardwired. Scientists are demonstrating the degree to which the brain is actually quite plastic, how our thoughts determine our mental landscape. They are exploring the relationship of willpower to psychology, how profoundly the mind can affect our health and functionality. It is possible that more and more will be discovered about how deeply we can create the various patterns of our lives through certain mental operations, how we are truly responsible for so much of what happened to us. People who are passive create a mental landscape that is rather barren because of their limited experiences and action. All kind of connection in the brain die off from lack of use, pushing against the passive trend, passive trend of these times. Passive trends of these times. You must work to see how far you can extend your control of your circumstances and create the kind of mind you desire. Not through drugs, but through action, unleashing the masterful mind within. You will be at the vanguard of those who are exploring the extent limits of human willpower. In many ways, the movement from one level of intelligence to another can be considered a kind of ritual of transformation. As you progress, old ideas and perspective die off. As new powers and are unleashed, you are initiated into higher level of seeing the world. Consider mastery as an invaluable tool in guiding you through this transformative process. The book is designed to lead you from the lowest level to the highest. The ideas in the book are based on extensive research in the field of neuro and cognitive science, studies on creativity, as well as the biographies of the greatest master in history and interviews with the contemporary master as well. The structure of mastery is simple. There are six chapters moving sequentially through the process. Chapter 1 is the starting point, discovering your own calling, your life's task. Chapter 2, 3, and 4 discover life different element of the apprenticeship phase. Learning skills, working with mentors, acquiring social intelligence. Chapter 5 is devoted to the creative active phase, and chapter 6 to the ultimate goal, mastery. Each chapter begins with the story of iconic historical figure who exemplifies the chapter overall concept. The section that follows, Keys to Mastery, gives you a detailed analysis of the phase involved, concrete ideas, how to apply this knowledge to your circumstances, and the mindset that is necessary to fully exploit these ideas. Following the key is section detailing the various strategies you can use to help advance you through the process. These strategies are designed to give you an even greater sense of practical application of the idea in the book. Finally, you must not see this process of moving through levels of intelligence as merely linear, heading towards some kind of ultimate destination known as mastery. Your whole life is kind of apprenticeship to which you apply your learning skills. Everything that happens to you is a form of instruction if you pay attention. Is a form of instruction if you pay attention. The creativity that you gain in learning a skill so deeply must be constantly refreshed as you keep forcing your mind back to a state of openness. Even knowledge of your vocation must be revisited throughout the course of your life as changes in circumstance force you to adapt its directions. In moving toward mastery, you are bringing your mind closer to reality and to life itself. Anything that is alive is in continual state of change and movement. The movement that you rest, thinking that you have attained the level you desire, and part of your mind enters a phase of decay. You lose your hard earned creativity, and others begin to sense it. This is a power and intelligence that must be continually renewed, or it will die. End of preface. Knowing it with clarity, you will find your way to proper career path and everything else will fall into place. The hidden force. Toward the end of April 1519, after months of illness, the artist Leonardo da Vinci felt certain that his death was only a few days away. For the past 2 years, Leonardo had been living in the chateau of Clouds in France, the personal guest of the French king, Francois I. The king had showered him with money and honors, considering him the living embodiment of the Italian Renaissance, which he had wanted to import to France. Leonardo had been most useful to the king, advi- advising him on all kinds of important matters. But now, at the age of 67, his life was about to end, and his thought turned toward other things. He made out his will, received the Holy Sacrament in church, and then returned to his bed, waiting for the end to come. As he lay there, several of his friends, including the king, visited him. They noticed that Leonardo was in a particularly reflective mood. He was not someone who usually liked to talk about himself, but now he shared memories from his childhood and youth, dwelling on the strange and improbable course of his life. Leonardo has always had a strong sense of fate, and for years he had been haunted by one particular question. Is there some kind of force from within that makes all living things grow and transform themselves? If such a force in exist, if such a force in nature existed, he wanted to discover it, and he looked for signs of it in everything he examined. It was an obsession. Now in his finals, hours after his friend and had left him alone, Leonardo would have almost certainly applied this question in some form or another to the riddle of his own life, searching for signs of a force or a fate that had brought about his own development and guided him to the present. Leonardo would have begun such a search by first thinking back to his childhood. In the village of Vinci, some 20 miles outside Florence, his father, Ser Piero da Vinci, was a notary and staunch member of the powerful Borghese. But since Leonardo had been born out of wedlock, he was barred from attending the university or practicing any kind of noble professions. His schooling, therefore, was minimal, and so as a child Leonardo was left mostly to himself. He liked most of all to wander through the olive groves around Vinci, or to follow a particular path that led to a much different part of the landscape. Dense forest, full of wild boar, waterfalls cascading over fast-moving stems, swan gliding to pools, strange wildflowers growing out of the side of cliffs. The intense variety of life in these forests enthralled him. One day, sneaking into his father's office, he grabbed some sheets of paper, a rather rare commodity in those days. But as a notary, his father had a large supply. He took the sheets on his walk into the forest, and sitting upon a rock he began to sketch the various sights around him. He kept returning day after day to do more of the same. Even when the weather was bad, he would sit under some kind of shelter and sketch. He had no teachers, no painting to look at. He did everything by eye, with nature as the model. He noticed that in drawing things he had to observe them much more closely and catch the details that made them come to life. Once he sketched a white iris, and in observing it so closely he was struck by its peculiar shape. The iris begins as a seed, and then is proceeded through various stages, all of which he had drawn over the past few years. What makes this plant develop through its stages and culminate in this magnificent flower, so unlike any other? Perhaps it possesses a force that pushes it through these various transformations. He would wonder about the metamorphosis of flowers for years to come. Alone on his deathbed, Leonardo would have thought back to his earliest years as an apprentice in the studio of the Florentine artist Andrea del Verrocchio. He had been admitted there at the age of 14 because of the remarkable quality of his drawings. Verrocchio instructed his apprentices in all the sciences that were necessary to produce the work of studio engineering, mechanics, chemistry, and metallurgy. Leonardo was eager to learn all these skills, but soon he discovered in himself something else he could not simply do an assignment. He needed to make it some things of his own, to invent rather than imitate the master. One time, as part of his studio work, he was asked to paint an angel in the larger biblical scene designed by Verrocchio. He had decided that he would make his portion of the scene come to life in his own way. In the foreground, in the front of Angel, he painted a flower bed, but instead of usual generalized rendering of plants, Leonardo depicted the flower specimens that he had studied in such detail as a child, with a kind of specific rigor no one had been before. For the angel face, he experimented with his paints and mixed a new blend that gave it kind of soft radiance that expressed the angel's sublime mood. To help capture this mood, Leonardo had spent time in the local church observing those in fervent prayer, the expression of one young man serving as the model for the angel. And finally, he determined that he would be the first artist to create realistic angelic wings. For this purpose, he went to the marketplace and purchased several birds. He spent hours sketching their wings, how exactly they merged into their bodies. He wanted to create a sensation that these wings had organically grown from the angel soldiers and would bring it natural flight. As usual, Leonardo could not stop there. After his work was completed, he became obsessed with birds, and the idea brewed in his mind that perhaps a human could really fly. If Leonardo could figure out the science behind avian flight, now several hours every week, he read and studied everything he could about birds. This was how his mind naturally worked. An idea flowered into another. Leonardo would certainly have recalled the lowest point in his life. The year 1481, the Pope asked Lorenzo de' Medici to recommend him to a finest artist in the Florence to decorate his chapel he just had built. The Sistine Chapel. Lorenzo complied and sent to Rome all the best Florentine artists, excluding Leonardo. They had never really gotten along. Lorenzo was a literally type steeped in the classic. Leonardo could not read Latin and had little knowledge of the ancient. He had more scientific bent to his nature, but at the root of Leonardo's bitterness at this snub was something else. He had come to hate the dependent force upon artists to gain royal favor, to live from commission to commission. He had grown tired of Florence and the court politics that resigned there. He made a decision that would change everything in his life. He would establish himself in Milan, and he would revise a new strategy for his livelihood. He would be more than an artist. He would pursue all kind of crafts and shines that interested him. Architecture, military engineering, hydraulics, anatomy, sculpture, for any prince, a patent that wanted him. He could serve as an overall advice and an artist for a nice stipend. His mind, he decided, work best when he had several different projects at hand, allowing him to build all kind of connection between them. Reflecting on his life in this way, you would have clearly detected the working of some kind of hidden force within him. As a child, this force had drawn him to the wildest part of the landscape, where he could observe the most intense and dramatic variety of life. This same force have compelled him to steal paper from his father and devote his time to sketching. It pushed him to experiment while working for Verrocchio. It guided him away from the courts of Florence and insecure ego that flourished among artists. It compelled him to an extreme of boldness, the gigantic sculptures, the attempt to fly, the dissection of hundreds of corpses for his anatomical studies, all to discover the essence of life itself. Seen from this vantage point, everything in his life made sense. It was in fact a blessing to have been born illegitimate. It allowed him to develop in his own way. Even the paper in his house seemed to indicate some kind of destiny. What if he had rebelled against this force? What if, after this Sistine Chapel rejection, he had insisted on going to Rome with others and forced his way into the Pope's good graces instead of seeking his own path? He was capable of that. What if he had devoted himself to mostly painting in order to make a good living? What if he had been more like the others, finishing his work as fast as possible? He would have done well, but he would not have been Leonardo da Vinci. His life would have lacked the purpose that it had, and inevitably things would have gone wrong. This hidden force within him, like that within the Irish he had sketched so many years before, had led to the full flowering of his capacities. He had faithfully followed his guidance to the very end, and having completed his course, now it was time to die. Perhaps his own words, written years before in his notebook, would have come back to him in such a moment. Just as a well-finished day brings blessed sleep, so a well-developed life brings a blessed death. Keys to mastery. Many of the greatest masters in the history have confessed to experience. Okay, end of page 22. Keys to mastery. 23. Many of the greatest masters in the history have confessed to experiencing some kind of force or voice or sense of destiny that has guided them forward. Such feeling can be seen as purely mystical, beyond explanation, or as hallucination and delusion, but there is another way to see them as eminently real, practical, and explicable. It can be explained in the following way. All of us are born unique. The uniqueness is marked genetically in our DNA. We are one-time phenomena in the universe. Our exact genetic makeup has never occurred before, nor will ever be repeated. For all of us, this uniqueness first expresses itself in childhood through certain primal inclination. For Leonardo, it was exploring the natural world around his village and bringing it to life on paper in his own way. For others, it can be an early attention to visual patterns, often an indication of future interest in mathematics, or it can be attraction to particular physical movement or spatial arrangement. How can we explain such inclination? They are forces within us that come from a deeper place that conscious word can express. This primal uniqueness naturally wants to assert and express itself, but some experience it more strongly than others. With master, it is so strong that it feels like something that has own external reality. A force, a voice, destiny. In moments we are engaged in an activity that corresponds to our deepest inclination. We might experience a touch of this. We feel as if the words we write or the physical movements we perform come so quickly and easily that they coming from outside of us. We are literally inspired. The Latin word meaning something from outside breathing within us. Let us state in the following way. At your birth, a seed is planted. That seed is your uniqueness. It wants to grow, transform itself, and flower to its full potential. It has a natural assertive energy to it. Your life's task is to bring that seed to flower, to express your uniqueness. Through your work, you have a destiny to fulfill. The stronger you feel and maintain it as a force, a voice, or whatever form, the greater your chance for fulfilling this life's task and achieving mastery. What weakens this force? What makes you not feel it, and even doubt it existent? It is a degree to which you have succumbed to another force in life. Social pressures to conform the counterforce can be very powerful. You want to fit into a group. Unconsciously, you might feel that what makes you different is embarrassing or painful. Your parents often act as counterforce as well. They may seek to direct you to a career path that is lucrative or comfortable. If these counterforces become strong enough, you can lose complete contact with your uniqueness, with who you really are. Your inclination and desire become more modeled on those of others. This can set you off on a very dangerous path. You end up choosing a career that does not really suit you. Your desire and interest slowly wane and your work suffers for it. You you come to see pleasure and fulfillment in something that comes from outside your work because you are increasingly less engaged in your career. You fail to pay attention to changes going on in your field. You fall behind at times and pay a price for this. At moments when you must make important decisions, you flounder or follow what others are doing because you have no sense of inner direction or radar to guide you. You have broken contact with your destiny as formed at birth. At all costs, you must avoid such a fate. The process of following your life task all the way to mastery can essentially begin at any point in life. The hidden force within you is always there and ready to be engaged. The forces of realizing your life's task comes in three stages. First, you must connect or reconnect with your inclination, that sense of uniqueness. The first step, that is always inward. You search the past for signs, that inner voice or force. You clear away the other voices that might confuse you, parents and peers. You look for an underlying patterns, a core to your character that you must understand as deeply as possible. Second, with this connection established, you must look at the career path you're already on or are about to begin. The choice of this path or the redirection of it is critical. To help in this stage, you will need to enlarge your concept of work itself. You want to see your work as something more inspiring, as part of your vocation. The word vocation comes from the Latin meaning to recall or to be recalled. It used in relation to work began in early Christianity. Certain people are called to life in such church that was their vocation. They could recognize this literally by hearing a voice from God, who had chosen them for this profession. The voice in this case that is calling you is not necessarily comes from God, but from deep within. It emanates from your individuality. It tells you which activity suits your character, and at a certain point it calls you to a particular form of work or career. Your work then is something connected deeply to who you are. Finally, you must see your career as a vocational path, more as journey with twists and turns rather than a straight line. You begin by choosing a field or position that roughly correspond to your inclination. This inclination position offers you room to maneuver, an important skill to learn. You don't want to start with something too lofty, too ambitious. You need to make a living and establish some confidence. Once this path, you discover certain side route that attract you, while other aspects of this will leave you cold. You adjust and perhaps move to a related field, continuing to learn more about yourself, but always expanding of your skills base like Leonardo. You take what you do for others and make it your own. Eventually, you will hit upon a particular field, niche, or opportunity that suits you perfectly. You will recognize it when you find it because it will spark that childlike sense of wonder and excitement. It will feel right. Once found, everything will fall into place. You will learn more quickly and more deeply. Your skill level will reach a point where you will be able to claim your independence from within the group you work for and move out on your own. You will determine your circumstances as your own master. You will no longer be subject to the whims of tyrannical bosses or scheming peers. This emphasis on your uniqueness and life's task might seem a poetic conceit without any bearing on practical realities, but in fact it's extremely relevant to the time that we live in. We're entering a world in which we really rely less and less upon the state, the the cooperation or family or friends to help and protect us. It is a globalized, harshly competitive environment. We must learn to develop ourselves. At the same time, it is a world teeming with critical problems and opportunities best solved and seized by entrepreneurs, individuals, or small groups who think independently, adapt quickly, and possess unique perspective. Your individualized creative skill will be at a premium. You are born with a particular makeup and a tendencies that mark you as a piece of fate. It is who you are to the core. Some people never become who they are. They stop trusting in themselves. They conform to the taste of others. They end up wearing a mask. That hides their true nature. If you allow yourself to learn who you really are by paying attention to that voice and face within you and force within you, then you can become what you're fated to become, a master. Page 28. Strategies for finding your life's task. It might seem that connecting to something as personal as your inclination and life's task would be relatively simple and natural once you recognize their importance, but in fact, it is the opposite. It requires a good deal of planning and strategizing to do it properly. Since so many obstacles will present themselves, the following five strategies are designed to deal with the main obstacle in your path over time. Pay attention to all of them because you will almost inevitably encounter each one in some form. 1. Return to your origins. The primal inclination strategy. In order to first, in order to master a field, you must love the subject and feel a profound connection to it. Your interest must transcend the field itself and border on the religions. It is not just physics that interest you, but discoveries, something about the invisible forces that governs the universe. It's not just the film or music that you pursue, but the chance to bring something powerful to life, to give voice to deepest emotion within you. You will find early signs of these larger religious like interests in your childhood in the form of certain inclination or attraction that are hard to put into words, are more like sensations. That of deep wonder in pondering a particular question, sensual pleasure, or power in engaging in a particular activity. The importance of recognizing the preverbal inclinations is that they are clear indications of an attraction that is not infected by the desires of other people. They are not something embedded in you by your parents, which come with a more superficial connection, something more verbal and conscious, coming instead from somewhere deeper. They can only be your own reflections of your own unique chemistry. As you become more sophisticated, you often lose touch with these signals from your primal core. They can be buried beneath all the other subjects you have studied. Your power and future can depend on reconnecting with these core and returning to your origins. You must dig for signs of such inclination in your earliest year. Look for its traces in visceral reaction to something simple. A desire to repeat an activity that you never tired of, a subject that stimulated an unusual degree of curiosity, feeling of power attached to particular actions. It is already there within you. You have nothing to create. You merely need to dig and refine what has been buried inside of you all along. If you reconnect with this core at any age, some element of that primitive attraction will spark back to life, indicating a path that can ultimately become your life's task. 2. Occupy perfect niche. The Darwinian strategy. The career world is like an ecological system. People occupy a particular field within which they must compete for resources and survival. The more people there are crowded into a space, the harder it becomes to thrive there. Working in such a field will tend to wear you out as you struggle to get attention, to play the political games, to win scarce resources for yourself. You spend so much time at these games that you have little time left over for true mastery. You are seduced into such fields because you see others there making a living, treading the familiar path. You are not aware of how difficult such a life can be. The game you want to play is different. To instead find a niche in the ecology that you can dominate. It is never a simple process to find such a niche, and requires patience and particular strategy. In the beginning, you choose a field that roughly corresponds to your interest: medicine, electrical engineering, writing. From there, you can go in one of two directions. The first is the narrowing path, from which you choose and field. You look from side path that particularly attract you: neuroscience, robotics, film writing. When it is possible, you make a move to this narrow field. You continue this process until you eventually hit upon a totally occupied niche. The lower the better, the narrower the better. In some ways, this niche corresponds to your uniqueness, to what sets you apart from others. The second is connecting, widening path. Once you have mastered your first field, you look for the other subject or skill that you can conquer on your own time if necessary. You can now combine this added field of knowledge to original one, perhaps creating a new field or at least making novel connection between them. You continue this process long as you wish. Ultimately, you create a field that is uniquely your own. This second vision fits in well with a culture where information is so widely available, in which connecting ideas is a form of power. In either direction, I love this line. Connecting ideas is a form of power. In either direction, you have found a niche that is not crowded with competitors. You have freedom to roam to pursue particular questions that interest you. You set your own agenda and command the resources available to this niche. Unburdened by overwhelming competition, and politicking. You have time and space to bring to flower your life's task. 3. Avoid the false path, the rebellion strategy. Avoid the false path. A false path in life is generally a career we are attracted for the wrong reasons: money, fame, attention, and so on. If it's If it's attention we need, we often experience a kind of emptiness inside that we are hoping to fill with the false love of public approval, because the field we choose does not correspond with our deepest inclination. We rarely find the fulfillment that we crave. Our work suffers for this, and the attention we may have gotten in the beginning start to fade, a painful process. If it's the money and comfort that dominates our decision, we are most often acting out of anxiety and the need to please our parents. They may steer us towards something lucrative out of care and concern, but lurking underneath this can be something else. Perhaps a bit of envy that we have more freedom than they have had when they were young. If this happens to you, your strategy must be twofold. First, to realize you are as early as possible that you have chosen your career for the wrong reasons, before your confidence take a hit, and second, to actively rebel against those forces that have pushed you away from your true path. Scoff at the need for attention and approval. They will lead you astray. Feel some anger and resentment at the parental forces that want to foist upon you an alien vocation. It is healthy part of your development to follow a path dependent of your parents and to establish your own identity. Let your sense of rebellion fill you with energy and purpose. 4. Let's let go of the past. The adaptation strategy. In dealing with your career and its inevitable changes, you must think in the following ways. You're not tied to a particular position. Your loyalty is not to a career or a company. You are committed to your life's task, to giving it full expression. It is up to you to find it and guide it correctly. It is not up to others to protect or help you. You are on your own. Change is inevitable, particularly in such a revolutionary moment as ours. Since you are on your own, it is up to you to foresee the changes going on you right now in your profession. You must adapt your life's tasks to these circumstances. You do not hold on to past ways of doing things, because that will ensure you will fall behind and suffer for it. You are flexible and always looking to adapt. If change is forced upon you, you must resist and temptation to overreact or feel sorry for yourself. Instead, you must look to find a way to adapt your experience, interest, and inclination to a new direction. You don't want to abandon the skills and experience you have gained, but to find a new way to apply them. Your eye is on the future, not the past. Often, such a creative readjustment leads to a superior path for us. We are shaken out of our complacency and found to reassess where we are headed. Remember, your life's task is a living, breathing organism. That moment you rigidly follow a plan set you lock yourself into a position and times with ruthlessly pass you by. 5. Find your way back. The life or death strategy. No good can ever come from deviating from the path that you were destined to follow. You will be exiled by varieties of hidden paths. Most people who deviate because of the lure of money, of more immediate prospects of prosperity, because this does not comply with something deep within you. Your interest will lag, and eventually the money will not come so easily. You will search for others easy sources of money, moving further and further away from your path, not seeing clearly ahead of you. You will end up in dead end career. Even your material needs are met. You will feel an emptiness inside of you that you will need to fill with any kind of belief system, drugs, or diversions. There is no compromise here, no way of escaping the dynamic. You will recognize how far you have deviated by the path of your pain and frustration. You must listen to the message of this frustration, this pain, and This pain and let it guide you. This pain and let it guide you. It's a matter of life and death. The way back requires a sacrifice. You cannot have everything in the present. The road to mastery requires patience. You will have to keep your force focused on 5 or 10 years down the road, when you will reap the rewards of your effort. The process of getting there, however, is full of challenges and pleasures. Make your own return to the path a revolution to set for yourself, and then tell others about it. It becomes a matter of shame and embarrassment to deviate from this path. In the end, the money and success that truly last come not to those who focus on such things as goals, but rather to those who focus on mastery and fulfilling their life's task. End of chapter 1.